It is 6:08 a.m. on November 10th, 2025. North of Venezuela, the sea is still dark, and the US carrier group around the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower moves in a tight formation when four fast patrol boats race toward them at more than 40 knots. Green flares rise from the destroyer USS Mason, the final warning sent into the air. The Seahawk helicopter above reports in a steady voice, but the message sends a chill through every room. The boats are now inside 1,000 yards. On the Gravely, sailors grip their weapons, watching the small silhouettes closing the distance with no change in speed. Then the sound hits one Venezuelan gunner racks the charging handle on his deck gun, and the helicopter's microphone picks it up clearly. For a moment, the ocean feels frozen. Engines scream, alarms echo, and both sides understand they are seconds from the first shot. On the American bridge, the question hangs heavy. Fire now, or wait one more second and risk taking the hit. This moment matters because the waters north of Venezuela are not simple open ocean. They are a crowded route where tankers, cargo ships, and Navy vessels move every hour. Any sudden move here can spread far beyond the horizon and pull two governments into a crisis they never planned for. For the US Navy, the Eisenhower Strike Group was sailing in international waters more than 80 miles from the Venezuelan coast. On a normal day, this is routine. But nothing feels normal when four fast boats appear on radar, heading straight toward a carrier carrying thousands of crew. One wrong hit on a ship like that would not just damage steel. It would force Washington to act, and everyone on board understood what that could mean. For Venezuela, the moment carried political weight. Their government wanted proof they could challenge the United States, and state media had talked for days about defending their waters. When the patrol squadron left Puerto Cabello before sunrise, the mission was not just about security. It was about showing strength on camera, even if the sailors themselves had no idea their radar data was outdated. Those sailors believed they were approaching a single destroyer, not a full carrier group that had shifted position overnight. Their old grid turned a simple show of force into a dangerous rush toward one of the strongest naval formations in the region. By the time they saw the size of the Eisenhower on the horizon, every American weapon system had already tagged them as possible threats. Inside the carrier group, the tension was real in a different way. Many younger sailors had never seen small armed boats push this close. Every alert and every echo on the screen felt heavier than usual. They knew that a bad call would not be seen as a misunderstanding. It would be seen as an attack, and neither side could escape the fallout. That is why this moment matters. It shows how fast pride, politics, and old equipment can pull two nations toward a line no one wants to cross. If you think Venezuela pushed too far, press 1. If you think the carrier group should have pulled back sooner, press 9 and tell us. The first signs of trouble appeared a little after 5:20 a.m. Inside the radar room of the USS Gravely, a young operator noticed four dots pushing cleanly through the background noise. At first, they looked like clutter, but then they held steady, moving fast and straight toward the strike group. The computer tagged them as Skunk Alpha 1 through 4. Their speed and tight formation told the crew this was not harmless traffic. These boats were coming with purpose. On the bridge, the tone changed the moment the report was read. The Gravely and the Mason shifted ahead of the Eisenhower to form a shield while the carrier held course. A radio warning went out, reminding the unknown vessels they were in international waters. No answer returned. The dots continued at more than 40 knots, showing no sign of slowing down or turning away. By 5:40 a.m., the Seahawk helicopter lifted off from the Eisenhower deck. Its rotors cut through the heavy morning air as it climbed to 500 feet. When the camera locked onto the radar contacts, the feed streamed across the strike group. Four Venezuelan fast boats, painted gray, armed, and running hard over the surface. The sight settled the tension deeper. This was not a misread signal. A second radio call went out. Still no reply. Instead, the boat shifted into a split formation. Two dropped low along the waves, while the other two pushed wide, forming a shape every trained crew recognized. Moments later, two short bursts fired into the water, not aimed at the Americans but close enough to show intent. Inside the combat rooms, Alarms pulsed, and the numbers on the screens ticked down as the fast boats closed the distance. The Gravely adjusted again, placing itself directly between the lead boat and the Eisenhower. The Seahawk lowered to 200 feet for a clearer view. Its sensor operator watched the men on deck, hands gripping their weapons, movement steady and deliberate. On both destroyers, younger sailors felt the pressure rise. A few had never seen armed boats push this close outside of drills. Every second now felt stretched. The boats kept closing. The carrier group stayed firm, ready but holding back. Both sides were locked into a moment neither could step out of. They were nearing 1,000 yards, and the next move could decide everything. The moment the Venezuelan boats split into two pairs, the tension inside the Eisenhower strike group jumped. On the Gravely, the tactical watch officer watched their new angles tighten on the radar. Even small turns matter at close range, and everyone on the bridge felt the pressure rise as the boats kept closing without slowing. Above the waves, the Seahawk held a steady hover and streamed video back to the carrier. Two boats stayed low in the spray, while the other two widened their path until the formation stretched into a slow pincer. It was not random, it was controlled and aimed straight at the American screen. Inside the Gravely's combat room, radar tracks updated every second. The Mason mirrored each move, forming a second layer of defense. Even small fast boats can hit hard at this speed, and the crews knew it. The distance kept shrinking, and the room shifted from cautious to alert. Then the Venezuelan boats fired another short burst into the water. The flashes lit the surface, reaching the Seahawk's microphones. It was not aimed fire, but it pushed the stakes higher. The Gravely's 5-inch gun rotated toward the lead boat. The Mason's CIWS locked onto its tracking cycle. No one fired, but everyone knew they were close. On the Eisenhower, officers called ranges in steady voices, but each update showed the gap closing faster. The carrier was the biggest target in the region, and if anything broke through the screen, the impact would be far more than damaged steel. The Venezuelan boats pushed on, using dips in the waves to hide their speed. Their engines roared as they reached full throttle. To the sailors watching, this no longer looked like a simple show of presence. It felt like a test to see how far they could go before the Americans reacted. Then the escalation peaked. One of the outer boats cut sharply inward, closing the gap faster than the others. To trained eyes, it was the most dangerous move yet. If it held that line, it would cross in front of the Mason in minutes, forcing a response the Americans hoped to avoid. For a moment, the strike group seemed to freeze. Both sides had pushed too far to back down easily. The next seconds would decide whether the morning ended quietly or with the first shots of a fight neither side wanted. If you think this sharp turn crossed the line and forced the strike group into full defense, press 1. If you believe the boats were still only signaling, press 9 and tell us what you see. The twist came when the Venezuelan crews finally saw what they were heading toward. Until now, they believed they were closing in on a single US destroyer. Their radar picture was old, taken from a shore station that had not updated since the night before. On that grid, Echo 2 appeared as one American ship, good for a quick warning pass and a video for state media. But during the night, the Eisenhower strike group had shifted its patrol lane by dozens of miles. None of the Venezuelan boats knew this. Their screens showed one large Echo, and some thought it was two small ships sailing close together. The shape felt wrong, but they kept pushing forward. Everything changed when the first light hit the horizon. From the bridge of the lead boat, the silhouette ahead grew wider and taller than anything they expected. The long deck and island tower made the truth clear. They were heading straight toward the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, a full carrier guarded by destroyers. For a moment, the Venezuelan deck froze. Helmets turned toward the massive shape rising through the haze. Their small patrol craft, meant for coastal missions, were suddenly facing one of the strongest naval formations in the region. Inside the Eisenhower, officers noticed the hesitation, but stayed alert. The boats were still closing fast, and confusion at close range can be as dangerous as intent. No one knew if the crews were scared or preparing to act. This was the twist. The Venezuelan boats were not attacking. They were following old data and political orders, not a clear picture of the sea. By the time they understood, they were already deep inside the danger zone of two destroyers ready to defend the carrier. The climax came quickly, almost faster than anyone on the Eisenhower strike group could react. As the Venezuelan boats pushed closer, the Gravely, the Mason, and the Philippine Sea shifted into a tight shield around the carrier. Every ship locked into position, ready for the moment when a choice had to be made. The Seahawk dropped to 200 feet, close enough for its camera to pick up the tension on the Venezuelan decks. The lead boat kept closing the distance with no sign of slowing. From the helicopter view, the bow lifted as the engines pushed hard. No one could tell if the crew planned to turn away or come straight in. Inside the Gravely, the tactical watch officer called out distances in a steady voice. 900 yards, 800, 700. At this range, even a small craft could hit hard enough to force a deadly response. The captain watched the screen, ready to authorize a warning burst the moment the rules allowed. Then, the moment everyone feared arrived, one of the Venezuelan boats drifted inward again. It was a small movement, but on radar, it looked like a clear approach toward the Mason's bow. The Mason's CIWS tracked it instantly. The system made no sound, but every sailor nearby felt the pressure rise. If the boat crossed the 1,000-yard line, the ship would be forced to act. No one spoke on the radio. No calls, no signals. Just engines echoing across the water. Sailors later said the next few seconds felt like minutes. The boat slipped closer, spray rising high as it cut through the waves. Then, at the final moment, it turned. Hard. The boat leaned sharply, throwing white water into the air. The turn was so sudden that men on deck grabbed the rail to stay upright. It veered away from the Mason and began pulling back. Seconds later, the other boats followed, breaking the formation they had held all morning. Inside the Eisenhower, a calm voice cut through the speakers. Contacts turning away. Hold weapons. Maintain tracking. The tension eased, but no one relaxed. The destroyers stayed locked on the retreating boats, waiting to make sure the move was real. Only when the boats were more than a mile out did sailors begin to breathe normally again. No shots fired, no impacts. Just a near miss decided by one sharp turn and a few seconds of hesitation. It was the closest point of the entire standoff, the moment when one wrong move could have turned the Caribbean into a battlefield. When the Venezuelan boats finally turned away, the Eisenhower strike group held position in full silence. No one trusted the retreat yet. Radar operators watched the contacts fade while the Seahawks circled above to confirm the boats were really leaving. Only when they passed several miles out did the destroyers begin lowering their alert status, though the tension still stayed on every deck. Everyone knew how close the morning had come to a real fight. As the sun rose, the carrier group shifted north to add more distance. The Gravely and the Mason widened their arcs, keeping watch on the now empty horizon. Some sailors leaned on the rails, replaying how close the boats came to the 1,000-yard line. Training prepares you for decisions, but not for the feeling of a fast craft rushing towards your ship at full speed. A short time later, the encounter moved to politics. Venezuelan state media released a clip claiming their patrol boats had repelled an American intrusion. The footage showed only their vessels speeding across open water. In Washington, the Pentagon countered with satellite images and radar logs, proving the strike group stayed in international waters the entire time. US officials called the incident reckless. Caracas insisted it was defending sovereignty. Behind closed doors, diplomats pushed to calm things down. Neither side wanted escalation, but neither wanted to appear weak. The truth was simpler. The confrontation grew from old information, rushed decisions, and two groups of sailors reacting to what they believed was a real threat. At sea, confusion spreads faster than intent. Inside the Eisenhower, officers reviewed the entire timeline. They knew how narrow the margin had been. One misunderstood course change, one radio call swallowed by static, or one gunner reacting half a second too fast could have started a crisis overnight. Modern sensors help, but they cannot stop human error, especially when small boats move fast and decisions must be made in seconds. In the end, no shots were fired. No one was hurt. But for the sailors who lived it, the morning showed how thin the line truly is. Sometimes the difference between peace and disaster is just one turn or one moment of hesitation. If you think this encounter was a warning for both sides, press 1. If you believe the next one might not end this safely, press 9 and share your view.